Live stream. All right, so we're up on the tubes now, getting YouTube going. If you want to switch over to that, youtube.com/JupiterBroadcasting/live. Here's what I like to answer kind of at the top of the stream, because I know this is always on people's minds, so please pass it along in the IRC. First of all, the main chat's over at irc.geekshed.net, pound Jupiter Broadcasting. Yeah, maybe we should use Discord. I don't know. What do you think? Go in the IRC room and tell me if we should be using Discord or not. And then the lowest latency video stream is at twitch.tv/Jupiter Broadcasting. So if you want video and you want lowest latency possible, twitch.tv/Jupiter Broadcasting. The OG stream, jblive.tv, where the chat is embedded. If you want audio, there's two ways to do that. Got a lot of options for you, you know. We have the Mumble Room, which is probably just easiest if you Google Jupiter Colony Mumble. There is a quiet listening room. You don't even have to have a microphone if you just want to listen. It's real time. It's as low latency as technology can get it. And that's probably the best way, although we also have jblive.fm if you just want an audio stream, which is nice on the smartphone. You know, you're in the old car skis or something?
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah. Wes is listening. He's always listening.
Just keep it tuned in constantly.
You know, I had a friend, I can't remember who now, who had built himself a little internet radio that does just that. It's like in a little box with an old-timey box with a speaker. And
oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's basically what he'd do. That's what he'd do. It's pretty cool. All right, so hello, chat room. Let's get over there. Let's get over there in that there chat room. Boom. Boom. We need a meme, you're right. I need some, like, easy way to bust through all that. Because I didn't even do the whole thing.
There's more spiel.
There's more spiel I could give, and I just didn't give.
Unspun.
I just felt like I didn't need to get into it all because I had just said it before I started the YouTube stream. And the YouTube stream takes like a few minutes. I see a few people are dropping on YouTube now, or not dropping. What do you call that? Joining, I guess.
Watching,
I don't know, Wes.
Streaming, joining us live.
I should, if I'm going to have to use my mouth organ, I should probably actually drink this Red Bull you bought me. Hello, Mumble Room. Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Aw.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hi there.
Day.
Good day. You picked a fun one to join us because we are here to serve no showmaster. We are here just to hang out and just chat with you guys because I had jury duty, and so we pre-recorded the show to be safe, and so now we're just here. Just to be here at our regular lifetime. And we have a collection of stories and clips to play, a regular cast of friends joining us. So it's pretty casual live stream, but I think that's great. It's kind of nice to do this every now and then. This is just a lug meeting this week. No show. It's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool.
Kind of cool. Kind of cool. Wes, do you know what it is about the RE20 that makes it sound better than the RE320? Because you know
that sexy gray look.
Well, no, it's like it looks like a piece of army equipment. It
does look like a piece of army equipment.
But it just, yeah, I can really hear the difference between when I'm on this mic and when I'm on my mic.
It is
at
nicer.
Home.
It's just a little. It's so sturdy and
there's something about the sound that's better.
Authoritative.
I don't know what it is. I think you could probably weaponize this thing.
I wouldn't want to get hit over the head with it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Hello, Mini Mac. How are you doing?
Yeah, I cannot complain. Thanks.
That's one of my favorite
tired.
lines.
I'm pretty tired of giving some ski lessons, and the last days I'm working like 6 to 7 hours per day.
Ooh,
And
skiing?
So when I come home, I'm freaking
bet.
tired. Let's
Do
say.
you just eat like a ton of food when you get home too, or are you just starving?
No, not really. No, I just come home, then it's warm, and maybe you take a little beer just to have a beer because you worked the whole day.
Yeah.
Then it's warm, and then you get tired, and all of a sudden you wake up and see, oh yeah, it's mumble time.
Oh, you could have let me know. I could have. It's today. I could have brought people in. It's no
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. It's no problem.
Wake the hell up then. All right, here you go. Your soundboard guy is coming through now.
You know, realize the RE20 was first launched in 1968.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
I know. It looks like it's from 1948. I mean, it really,
Apparently has some rather inappropriate nicknames as well.
really.
Uh-huh. Referring to the genitalia of several different types of animals.
Got any hints?
Elephant? Donkey?
Really?
Yeah.
I guess I wouldn't know. It's not the first thing that comes to mind when I see this thing.
Yeah, you've got other uses for it in mind.
Yeah, I've never actually. I think some people phallicate things. Is that the right way to put
Yeah,
that? They just
yeah.
auto-phallicate.
I think you're right about that.
Like some people see faces, some people see other things. Just
So remember yesterday when you were making fun of me for my, I guess it'll be in the show, my Excel reference?
yes, yeah. For stereotyping all Mint users.
Yeah, right. Here, today, I see posted over on GitHub from, I guess, some folks at Amazon, computer vision, the basics of it, implemented in nothing but Microsoft Excel. So if you can't just do anything in Excel, yes, you can.
How big of a macro must they be using? I mean, how do you
It
pull
looks
that off?
really professional, too.
Yeah, tell me when they got a first-person shooter built into Excel. Then I'll be impressed. You ever see that one?
It's just absurd.
There used to be a Easter egg in Excel. There used to be a first-person shooter in Excel. Yeah, that is absurd. I watched. I couldn't tell what the licensing was, so I didn't save it for the show. But I saw a really cool GitHub project last night where a dude made this software that just totally removes people from the image. So as long as the camera has a picture of, like, if it's a video. Oh, I should make that clear. It's also live video.
Oh, that's cool.
So as long as it has a look at the room first,
With no people.
yeah, it can in real time as somebody walks through a frame or
It'll go
sits on
figure it out and
it'll just remove them.
Whoa.
Yeah, you can see how that could be used at like for video conference. You know how like video conferencing software is doing like that really horrible fake bokeh?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
just looks so bad. Where there's
Hey,
like
that's a key feature of Microsoft Teams, Chris.
I know. Well, it's because everybody, it's a part of when you work remotely. Like people are now all of a sudden have to care about their background. So why not also then like take out family members that might have walked in the room while you're on a call or something? You could totally see it.
Now, is there one to remove dog barking in the background? Because I need that.
Yeah, that would be great. Animal noises in general. Yeah, that would be pretty nice. So, nobody in the chat. When I hear people talk about IRC now, they talk about it like it's this. Like I've heard people, oh yeah, I have IRC around because JB uses it. I've heard people say that, and I'm like, oh, we're those people now?
Yeah.
We're like how people talk about the Debian project. That's how we are now. And I'm like, oh, maybe we should
You
stop.
mean the venerable and highly respected Debian project?
Yeah. It makes me wonder if maybe its time has come.
Popey, I think you're about to find out what a no-show stream is.
What is a no-show stream? This right here. Basically, we just arm wrestle the whole time.
Yeah. I'll get you this next round.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't make for great radio, but it's not a show. So who cares? Who cares, right? I don't care. So I got it. Did you see I threw a little collection of stuff in
We
there?
got some stuff to talk about.
I know. It's kind of...
Pushing the boundaries of no show.
Well, it's kind of a little bit of a show. A little bit. It's like...
Micro show?
Yeah, it's a micro show. That's what it is. I mean, I feel like once you start creating a markdown document for a thing,
Just gonna happen.
it's kind of showy. It kind of becomes a show. Like when you go from no doc to doc, it
So you're
becomes.
saying I started this?
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
we have broken the seal on the show, but it is kind of nice because Then I was like, there's a couple of links I saw recently.
What am I chatting about?
Interesting things are afoot. So we'll give folks a few minutes to show up. See how everybody's doing. Yeah, it's true. Popey says there's over 1,000 people on IRC. I feel like distro IRC is like where it's the strongest, like specifically for distributions in terms of.
Right, you'll go there if it's worthwhile. If there's a community of people who can help you or are actively working and talking together.
Yeah, but man, is there a lot of Discord servers I'm on now, and I don't really use Discord. I forget about it, and then I check in a couple weeks later, like, whoa.
Tons of like private little, not even public, but like Slack channels for programming languages.
Yeah.
New distro install, huh, Joe?
Dill's distro hopping. Unfilter listener, Mrs. Unfilter.
Aw.
Well, we're going to have a little Unfilter style tech live stream, playing some clips today. So you picked a good one to show up. Doing little clips. Chase is trying to talk me into doing a Unfilter election night live stream.
Oh.
I just feel like if we did that,
you could do a practice run Super Tuesday.
I just feel like if we did that, it would open a can. Colonel, it's going great, although we have this weird problem. We have two weird problems we're troubleshooting right now that are totally not a big deal, but weird. Item number one, the fireplace, our electric fireplace, is not showing up anywhere on the load indicators from AC shore, from the inverter. It's not showing anywhere up on our load.
Are you saying that somehow you're getting magical free electricity?
Yeah, that would seem to be the implication. And then here's another weird one. So our microwave sits over the stovetop, and it has a built-in fan and lights, right? And you got the lights, you can do bright, soft, off, boop, boop, off, right? Boop, boop, off. So when you're plugged into shore power, your regular old AC, like full power, the lights don't work. They're wired into the same outlet that the microwave is, and the microwave works.
Still works?
But the lights don't work. Then, when you unplug from shore power and go on battery power, the lights in the microwave work.
Weird.
It is weird.
So you just got a microwave in the dark.
It's the weirdest thing. And they're not even critical lights, right? But it's like, how is that wired? Don't understand. Well, it's nice to see you then, Unfiltered listener. Keep an ear out. You never know. Chase is trying to talk me into doing something special.
And you might like some of your other side gigs, too. That Chris Lastcast.
Thanks. Look at you. I should get chrislast.com. Check out chrislast.com. Got a couple other side things. Little creative projects. I got to come up with a good name for them. They're basically creative projects that I started. So that way I don't crap up the JPVs. Oh, it's true. It's really true.
Hello, fellows.
Hey, Cheesy. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, it's Anderson!
I'm here.
Yeah? Were you able to get any rest?
Yeah. Not really.
I'm sorry. I know how that goes when you're
It's just the worst.
trying to nap during the day. Doesn't always work very well anyways. I don't know about that, Frank. I don't know about that. Hello, Computer Kid. Welcome to the Mumble. Boo-boo-boo-boo. Yeah, I mean, those live streams were crazy for us. Those live streams were just the nuttiest because it's like multiple hours and you don't know where it's going to go. And to do it right, you're pulling in as many network feeds live as you can into the studio. So it's all hands on deck, all machines. Chase is doing some switching. I'm doing switching. It's a big thing, Plus, then you got the Mumble Room going.
Right.
It's a lot. That's all I'm saying. It's a lot. Yes. There you go. Hey, look at that.
Pushing the bounds of broadcasting potential.
And Comcast downstream. Yeah.
We may
We're not
need some
recording any
faith
of this today.
healers.
No. Yeah.
It's ephemeral.
I'm not going to dignify that with an answer.
We need that on the freaking soundboard.
It's good times, Soundboards. Good times had by all. How's the drive up, Wes?
Not bad. It's a beautiful day. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
all the mountains are out, covered in snow.
Yeah.
Sun's actually shining today.
It is.
Yeah.
It
Not a
was
great
super
day.
cold this morning, but beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice. I'd love to go outside. Maybe I will after this.
What's super cold?
It's low 30s. It was like 20 something
Yeah, it wasn't
outside when I
really that
woke up.
cold. It was just the first time.
It's 27 here in Arlington in the morning when I woke up. If the sky manages to clear, you get a cold night. It's
So
basically
do you have
what it is.
to kick on the heaters and stuff for the water tanks when it gets like
yeah,
that?
if it gets that cold, yeah, I got sensors and stuff that kick them on
He's
for
got
me.
an assistant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, auto start.
Alexa starts your.
If he doesn't make that sound, he's just separately set it up as part of the routine to play the
I
sound.
got a little speaker down there.
Yeah.
That would be me. I would totally do that. I love sound effects. You know, if they can put them in electric cars, I can put them in my heaters.
Yeah.
Wom, 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 wom. Yeah, and then once our furnace is working too, that heats everything up. Sure do. Well, we don't have any official start time, and I had a little video medley that I wanted to do.
Yeah, it looks like the
Video medley, huh?
things are finishing up on the other side. So
Oh, yeah?
we
Okay.
might as well. Or, no, we still got a little time. I
Yeah.
think.
Well, you know, there's one story that just didn't quite pass my sniff test today. So I thought maybe you and I could go through it here. It's this use of proprietary software is plummeting.
That sounds good.
Yeah. But, like, so this is the question. This is the question that this article. Well, actually, let's read the facts and I'll give you my question. Well, hopefully I'll remember what it was. But a piece in here that I thought was interesting over at computing.co.uk. Computing for IT leaders. Enterprise open source software is being widely used for IT infrastructure modernization, application development, and DevOps, finds the report. Supporting this general finding, recent computing research into DevOps, CI and CD tools for Delta found that 75% were using open source core, open source with proprietary add-ons, for managing software production. Interestingly, the cost advantage, while the enterprise open source vendors charge for support, is typically less expensive than their proprietary equivalents. But this was ranked second. For the first time, higher quality software was the reason people were using the software.
The bigger riser the advantages. What is the sentence?
The biggest? I know, it's a weird...
The biggest riser in the advantages ranking, moving from 8th place last year to 4th this year, was designed to work in cloud native technologies.
Yeah, so like that means like if we buy it, A, we want it to have an open core, B, we want it to be high quality, and C, it needs to work in the cloud or at least support cloud APIs and stuff like that.
Yeah, actually, 83% of respondents said open source has been instrumental in my organization's ability to take advantage of cloud architectures.
Huh. In particular, 56% of respondents expected their use of containers, key cloud native technologies, to increase in the next 12 months. So 56% expected the use of containers to increase.
Yeah, containers are cloud native. You can't run containers on bare metal. Like, what are you going to do?
Cloud native. Here's what I was taking from this. Is it possible that all use of desktop Linux could cease to exist? All free desktop software could cease to exist, and the overall use of open source software would still continue to rise on a whole or on an average because of its adoption in the enterprise and deployment in the cloud?
Yeah, I don't see why that's not possible.
Sort of a sobering thought, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it would go backwards by any means, right?
If we just if all desktop free software disappeared, the overall market use of open source would still be huge. It's like not a blip on the radar.
Mm-hmm. It just turns out that model works well, right? I think that's part of the story with the cloud native stuff is that it's the next generation of infrastructure, and it happened at a time when we'd started to take advantage and realize how to take advantage of sharing infrastructure layers and the advantages that you can do there. And the cloud has commoditized so many things that it's already broken apart, and open source can just sort of pull pieces together to work with.
I don't know if I'm right though, because if you think about it, you got Firefox, right? You got all of the open source deployments of software on Windows of GIMP and LibreOffice and all of those things, but they probably all still pale in comparison to the amount of deployments on server infrastructure, be it cloud or on premises.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on how you measure it. And where, I guess, because we're talking about stuff here, right? This is IT leaders, this is big business. That doesn't say anything about computing in the third world or other underserved parts of the world.
Yeah, or mobile, it's really looking at the IT world. But Boy, it's fascinating because when I first got into IT, it was a little risky. It was like a little like kind of possibly taking a hit to my reputation to keep recommending the free stuff. And now here we are. I mean, I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see it. So we already recorded Linux Unplugged this week because I was at jury duty, and we're just hanging out. But we will actually roll today's episode of Linux Unplugged when it's fresh off the presses a bit. But in the meantime, I have a couple of things. I got a medley that I wanted to go through. The first is, and I've been seeing this story over and over again, but now it's getting reported on the actual TV news. Boy, they're loud, aren't they? Anyways, that the FTC is coming after old Alphabet, the parent company of the Googs.
The U.S. Federal Trade Commission just ordered major technology companies to fork over details on waves of small acquisitions made during the last decade.
So to break that down, Facebook, Apple, Google, and others have gotten requests by the FTC to say, hey, explain to us your little acquisitions and large acquisitions for the last decade. And there's one in particular that they're particularly interested in.
A more sizable deal is also seen as a target for the regulator, Google's $1.1 billion purchase of mapping app Waze. To discuss this and all...
Yeah, we'll stop there. We don't need to hear them discuss it. But yeah, the Federal Trade Commission seems to be eyeing big tech. And it's also been in the campaigns recently. Have you noticed that? Like some of the candidates are kind of rallying against big tech. There's like a big tech pushback.
Yeah, I mean, we've just seen it eat up a lot. You know, it's kind of a huge part of our life now. And at some point, you just bat up with like, how do we have this as part of our society? What are the rules around it? What do we actually want?
Wonder what it is that all of a sudden brings these companies into the targeting system of the federal government. Is it the backroom workings of politicians? Is it a political thing? Is it a ongoing complaints lead up to something? It's probably a lot of things. But it's just, to me, it's odd, like what gets investigated and what doesn't. So take Amazon, for example.
Amazon is working on...
They have a brand new thing coming. What are they working on? Not Whole Foods, not the Amazon quick grab go kind of convenience stores, a whole new kind of grocery store.
Amazon is working on the first in a new chain of grocery stores set to open this year, looking to disrupt the $800 billion grocery industry. Amazon did provide a sneak peek, and it actually looks remarkably similar to a conventional supermarket. So let's bring in Brad Stone, who leads Bloomberg's global technology coverage. He joins us from San Francisco. That's kind of disappointing because we're so accustomed to thinking of Amazon as a disruptor. So I guess maybe let's take a step back first and just ask, why is Amazon even doing this? Because this is not Whole Foods, and this is not the convenience go stores that Amazon has opened without cashiers.
Right, and then let me correct one thing that you said. Amazon did not provide this sneak peek. These are, this sort of illicit spy photos from some.
Oh
my!
Ooh.
That's
Spy photos.
Okay.
It's espionage.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right, and we don't quite know what. I mean, what we know is that Amazon seems to be about to open up maybe a half dozen or so, maybe more grocery stores in the LA area. We think there's one in Washington, D.C. We think there's one in Seattle. We don't know what they're going to call it. And by all accounts, and if you look at some of these photos, they do look sort of conventional. Right now, why would Amazon do this? Well, you go back to 2007.
I don't care why they would do it. They want to make money. Cheese, would you shop at an Amazon grocery store?
I mean, if there were deals to be had, yeah.
Yeah? Yeah?
You know, I could see them buying out small grocers like Aldi or some of these other struggling grocery stores, Brookshire Brothers and stuff like that, to gain market share. And I think that's why you see the overall interest in the government and the FTC wanting to kind of inquire on.
They're getting into everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, where were we at? What was it, 20 years ago now that Microsoft had its antitrust lawsuit, and then old Zuck was in front of Congress recently.
He's over in the EU right now, kind of doing an apology tour right now as well today.
Yeah, and so, and Trump is, and, we have the new, what is it, GDPR or whatever, and...
I'm trying to think, though, if I would shop there. What about anybody in the Mumble Room? Would you not shop? Say Amazon went worldwide with this. They open it up in your location. Would you boycott it?
Would you starve?
I mean...
we are in a situation here in Switzerland, but because it never existed before, that we have some local distributors that are big in big business. So even though we can order now with Amazon Germany, Swiss people tend to prefer the local distributors. That's how it works here in Switzerland.
Well, so in my town, that's how I'd say we preferred it. What happened is Walmart came in, and they came in with a huge super center when there was an independent grocer at the other end of basically the hill, just on the other side of the hill. Put that guy out of business, and then paid rent on the space for about 5 years, so no other grocery store to just keep it empty. They paid rent on the building to keep the space empty, so that way no other grocery store could move into the infrastructure and compete with them.
It's the kind of movie you can make when you got that cash.
And eventually, it was sold to a company that built it for a trampoline park.
Yeah, you have seen some like smaller towns and stuff sort of, like, no, we don't want your giant chain in here for reasons like that, I think.
You have to understand me well. They do have internet order available, everything, so you can order internet, you have it the next day, but they prefer to use Swiss companies than Amazon.
Sure. For years now, I've said Amazon's going to become the Walmart of the internet, and here they are. What about you? Would you shop there, Wes?
I kind of already don't. I never really liked Whole Foods, and after the purchase, it hasn't incentivized me. I wouldn't say no. I mean, I have tried out their like Amazon Go store and stuff, and I do buy things off Amazon now and again, but I would try to support local businesses. And if it was exceptional quality maybe, or a really pleasant environment, or had products I couldn't really get elsewhere, I would, but I'd try not to.
That's it for me, I think. So while you were talking about that, I was thinking I would shop there if they provided me something that all the other places don't provide. If they gave me something that was a unique experience, like their Amazon Go stores do.
Right.
They've done something new and unique, and I find that compelling. It makes it quick. It makes it efficient. You don't have to interact with anybody. You just get in, get out. Here, they're just kind of doing a grocery store. They're not doing
There's
anything
already a fair
new.
amount of choice there, yeah.
Yeah, they're not doing anything new. They're not doing anything fresh or innovative, and I'm not so into. That I think is a little unfortunate, where they're just sort of using that big business position to come in and do whatever the heck they want.
Well, I think it's still yet to be seen, like where are they getting this fresh produce from, this meat from? I mean, it could be sourced locally. So
that's true. I mean, that would be kind of great in a way, wouldn't it? If it ended up, that could be kind of great. But
I mean, they're already really plugging their Amazon pantry, and there's quite a few commercials now where like, especially since the Super Bowl, like get your dry aged beef in just 2 days or just 2 hours. Get your like, I mean, it's definitely going to be a thing. It's just a matter of when it gets ramped up to be there.
So now the shoe is about to drop for Amazon as well, just like they're coming for Googs.
We are getting an exclusive first look at a new investigation into Amazon and Jeff Bezos, premiering tomorrow on Frontline. Take a look.
Rachel Greer worked in product safety at Amazon.
You know it's serious.
Voice, yeah.
When they get the voice guy, you know it's going to be hard hitting.
And worried that the site was being flooded with untested and potentially unsafe products.
Are there proper warnings? Has it been safety tested for durability? If a child chews on it, will the paint come off? Is that paint leaded?
Most people would assume that there is a pretty high safety standard on Amazon.
And that assumption would be incorrect.
She says that's because Amazon, like other tech companies, takes the position that it's not legally responsible if its customers are harmed by products sold by third parties on the site.
If someone buys something that causes harm at Walmart or at Target, a consumer can sue Walmart or Target.
Right, because no one's forcing you when you come into Walmart to enter the doors of Walmart. They aren't making you sign away your rights.
But when do you sign that? When you go on Amazon.com?
When you make your account. You accept the terms and conditions.
Oh!
Snap.
That's a good point. So they're coming for Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 2020 is gonna be a rough year for big tech, I think, and I'm not sure if I'm feeling for them. I think they could be used maybe to be taken down a peg or two, to tell you the truth. But this whole thing is going to be a big special that they release on PBS Frontline.
Filmmaker James Jacoby is with me now. And James, we just watched that clip from your documentary about product safety on Amazon. I want to play Amazon's response for you.
Oh, that's convenient.
What I can say is we work really hard to make sure that they're safe.
So what I would advise this guy is not to start with the sentence, "what I can say," because what it makes it sound like is there's things you can't say. And he seems like he should know that. And it's almost like he can't help himself. You know, it's a funny mindset we get into. Anyways, I continue on.
What I can say is we work really hard to make sure that they're safe. We've spent $400 million in the last year on systems that seek out things that are not safe. And, you know, there are millions of sellers and hundreds of millions of products. And our job is to, as fast as we can, weed out the ones that don't belong on our site.
Here's what that response kind of makes me consider from Amazon's side of this. It's sort of like average users are discovering the issues with EULAs in terms of services for the first time in a way that actually impacts them. And so now all of a sudden it matters. And like that's on Amazon all of a sudden. And then secondly, I don't think average consumers can appreciate the scale at which services like Amazon or YouTube are operating and why their systems are not flawless at that scale and how that is just a problem that we just don't fully have the technology to address yet. And users are not really familiar with any of these issues.
Well, I think it's a value judgment too, right? So we have to decide, like, if this is the scale we want, right? Because Amazon's just going to try to scale out. That's what they do. So we have to decide, like, is this the right model?
That's really what That's what third party resellers really kind of allow them to do is scale out so they don't have to carry that inventory.
And is that a marketplace that serves us well?
What makes them any different than like eBay or Wish or AliExpress or Alibaba or Craigslist or any other place where you can
into this?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
you know, a market in downtown LA, right, where you can get counterfeit knockoff goods. I mean, these, you know, people that are going to sell this type of merchandise are going to find a way to do it. Even if they have to create a third-party seller account,
Etsy,
and only sell 500 units, and then kill that account and then set up another one, and then, you know, you can just continue to make these
burn
shell
through
accounts
the accounts.
to make money.
I think too, this is one of those stories that's going to lead to absolutely nothing changing because this is how the industry operates, and it's not just one company, and it's a lot of companies, and they're big ones.
It's a lot of inertia people don't see.
But what it will result in is a hit to their reputation. The public at large will now perceive this as sort of an issue that's on Amazon.com's marketplace. Mm-hmm. It creates a perspective, which sucks for Amazon.
It does.
All right, so you spoke with both of them. You got two very different stories there. What do you make of that response?
I mean, I think that's Jeff Wilke. He's the CEO of Amazon. He's number 2 to Jeff Bezos, basically, and he's saying what he's saying is truthful. They spend a huge amount of money trying to weed out bad things on the site. Clearly, at the end of the day, though, they don't take responsibility legally if someone is hurt by a product that has been sold by a third party. And it bears mentioning that about 60% of the sales on Amazon.com are from third-party sellers that are selling to us on the site, and it's not necessarily clear to someone who's uninitiated that it's a third party you're buying it from.
Yes.
So that kind of underscores what I was saying. It's sort of like the average users don't quite fully grasp it because it's not something that they've had.
This is their first real dip into this world. Yeah.
And it happens to be one that has some consequences.
I think Amazon could make it a little clearer for consumers to, when they're purchasing, that they're purchasing from a third party.
Fair point on that. Yeah, like I know because it's not primable.
But you have to dig it. You know, you have to kind of dig for the information. But
yeah, well, and if you're new to Amazon, I could totally. Yeah. I mean,
and it changes too, right? Like sometimes it'll be like, oh, this is shipped from Amazon, and the next time you're like, oh, you can only get it from this weird.
Or sometimes this is always a weird one. Sold by a third party, but fulfilled by Amazon. Right. So it's like I think it's coming from an Amazon warehouse.
But are they responsible for it?
Are they like renting space from Amazon?
Or like all those YouTube videos, right? You can become super rich by just being a drop shipper on Amazon.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So I've got just one or two more. I don't know if I'll play the second one, but this I just wanted to play a bit of because, basically, hurrah podcasting. This is what you call a native ad here, everybody. But really, everything they say about Audible, you could apply to podcasts.
The special bulletin from Trenton, New Jersey.
It's been a little while since families huddled around the radio for entertainment. And honestly, these days it takes a pretty major event to even get us in front of the TV at the same time. But ironically, at a time with more visual content available than ever before, big players in entertainment are betting that it's time for the radio drama to make a comeback. So I guess my question is, why? People have been talking about podcasts being the next big thing basically since they were invented. And podcasts are bigger than ever. But Star Wars? Wolverine? Probably not the type of stories you'd expect
Star Wars
to
sort of asked
listen
to do this.
For the first time in a long time, audio is being treated like a first-class medium.
I like that. I like that. So this whole thing again, this is to really position Audible's originals, which you have to be a subscriber to. Audible's a big spender on advertising, so
yeah.
I think it's safe to assume this is a native ad, and it's really kind of a funny thing because the way they position this is that Audible distributes more audio content than anyone in the world, more than all the podcasts put together, than public radio, than the radio stations like NBC that have been on the air since the very beginning. Like,
right?
Yeah, you'll see.
Been working on Star Wars Dooku Jedi Lost, which is the first ever Star Wars audiobook with a full cast. So instead of just having one narrator, we have a number of different people playing roles in the story.
Cavan Scott is the author of...
They say this is the first audiobook. That is so not
crazy.
true at all. I have audiobooks that have a cast. That's such crap.
Of Dooku Jedi Lost.
Speak only when they have something useful to say. A Jedi should.
It explores the backstory of a character in the Star Wars prequel movies from the early 2000s.
So what made you decide to do an audio version of this? Why not TV? Why not print?
I think it's because listening is becoming so much part of people's lives now. It's become, I think, something people do when they're commuting more than perhaps reading a book. But it was really interesting to see Star Wars sort of asked to do this, acknowledging the fact that things are changing so fast.
Things are changing fast. A lot of people don't even know this type of content exists, and yet there's already so much of it to choose from.
Audible is the largest creator and distributor of audio content. Most recently, where we've really been doubling down, is creating our own and creating these Audible originals with top-notch talent, absolutely creative writers and artists and musicians and performers.
I counted 6 cuts in that sentence that she did. There were 6 different cuts on that to really get that message right, because that's the nut of what they're paying for right there. So watch her. You can listen to it. You can see if I'm
already so much of it to choose from.
Audible is the largest creator and distributor of audio content. Most recently, where we've really been doubling down, is creating our own and creating these Audible originals with top-notch talent, absolutely creative writers and artists and musicians and performers.
3 solid ones. Yeah, I think I was counting every time they cut cameras, but some of those they were multiple camera angles, but it was one sentence on a couple of them.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely 3 really solid. I gotta do it one more time. Let's just make because now I'm fixated.
So much of it to choose from.
Audible is the largest creator and distributor of audio content. Most recently, where we've really been doubling down, is creating our own and creating these Audible originals with top-notch talent.
At least 2. I don't know. It's pretty choppy. So that you hear there. So what's great about this, and one more thing that I think is it shows you how fucking surface level they go with this. So as she walks up to the door, she says, most of the world doesn't even know this content exists.
Changing fast. A lot of people don't even know this type of content exists.
And then she sits down with the gal, and the gal's all like...
Creator and distributor of audio content. Most recently, where we've really been doubling down, is creating our own.
But how can you be the world's largest and then nobody knows about you at the same time?
Already so much of it to choose from.
Audible is the largest creator and distributor of audio content.
How can that be? How can Audible be the largest distributor of audio content?
I mean, is it perhaps some trickery in how it's measured?
Measured by the time of the books.
Right. I mean, the books are long.
That's what it is. That is totally
And why was there like a third-rate Yoda in that read? It definitely didn't even sound like the actual actor.
I know. Well,
it's pretty poor.
Dinner, etc.
It's such a puff piece. Such a puff piece.
I mean, no kidding.
Definitely.
You want to do one more, or are we done?
I thought you were going to say, is JB making like a radio drama series?
We could.
Yeah.
But yeah, one more.
One more?
Why not? One more? We're on a roll, right?
All right, this is
Let's
fun
do
too. All right, this will be a fun one. Here you go. This is your CBS Morning News program for February 12th, 2020, presenting a foldable phone.
Okay, we're getting a look at what could be the future of smartphones with two brand new foldable phones. Samsung unveiled its highly anticipated Galaxy Z Flip yesterday. The phone's bendable glass screen is the first of its kind. This comes a week after Motorola released its new Razr. The Razr is an updated version of the flip phone that was a huge success more than 15 years ago. Some of us remember those. Yeah. Dan Ackerman, senior managing editor with our partners at CNET, is here with a...
This guy's a little squirrely. Watch him.
A first look at the new Samsung Galaxy Z Flip before it hits stores.
A little dancing in the
Friday.
seat.
Good morning, Dan.
Hey, guys.
And you're going to give me that at the end of this segment.
That's right. Got some fun
Can we
toys
just
for
start off by
everybody.
saying this is so cool?
Yeah, it's really... Give us a little demonstration.
Really interesting. Now, it looks
out
like
of
a
his
regular
seat
phone when
slightly?
you hold it up.
Yeah.
But then you go like this, and look at that. The screen bends, and unlike some of the earlier flexible phones, and there have been a couple, the screen is actually made of a type of flexible glass, not plastic.
Yeah.
Okay, elephant in the room. What do we all think of this? Would you buy it?
I mean, I'm all about a smaller device that you can use with one hand, but I think it kind of defeats the purpose when you fold the phone in half.
Well, it goes in the pocket. It goes in the pocket
yeah,
easier.
I mean, it goes in the pocket easier, but it doesn't make it any easier to use. I don't know. I think that this is just another trend like slap bracelets or hypercolor t-shirts or something, right? Like it's only going to last for a couple of years at most. Yeah. Like, I don't know, dude. It looks tacky. There's a freaking crease in the middle of your screen.
Yeah, I don't like that part at all.
You know, I mean, it's just, they're trying too freaking hard.
Is it for attention?
To make it work. I think
is
so.
it to draw attention away from competitors?
Well, I think that it's a response to the Motorola and the new Razr. I think that's exactly what Samsung's done here with this particular device.
Anybody in the mumble room, would you actually want one? I mean, it seems like you'd probably break your screen less, right? Because it's. I mean, is anybody in the mumble room interested in this? Anybody in the chat
I don't
room?
break my screen that much now.
Your last phone was broken.
Yeah, but it still worked.
That's true, and this phone hasn't been broken, so I'm guessing you wouldn't buy one.
I mean, I'm
Imagine
more
if it's the
interested in
Pixel.
like the super minimalist phone.
Let's get serious about this for a second. Google makes a foldable because they're building this into Android. Let's say the Pixel 5 is foldable. Because everybody pooped all over the 4 for being so boring. So Google does their moonshot again, and they make a foldable Pixel 4, USB-C, it's all stock Google, it's got a great camera, it's best camera yet.
Yeah, I guess if it wasn't annoying. I don't know that I need the fold, maybe I'd come to love it. But if there weren't downsides.
See, I think some of this is because it's Samsung. But if you pictured it on the Google store, made by Google, I might try it.
Well, I think this also brings up the question about the quality of the glass, right? Like,
Yeah,
is it
that's
like
it.
Gorilla Glass and scratchable, and
And what happens if like pocket lint gets in the what is that called, the
hinge?
Hinge.
Or like even dirt or something, and you fold the phone in half.
Yeah,
and
like you
you're carrying
drop it
around
in
your
the, what
pocket
if you
all
drop
day?
it at the beach or something and sand gets in there? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I just got to believe in a year or so that screen's going to have a permanent mark on it.
Right.
And there's always going to be a bit of a divot.
If it gets kind of like floppy.
Although I think the 3D effect of putting the phone down on a table and then cocking the screen up and then when you scroll stuff between the
That
top
would
and
be
bottom
cool.
would be really sweet. I don't know, man. Because you see, here's the other thing is these phones are sacrificing camera quality to get smaller lenses in there. And they're sacrificing speaker quality. And they're sacrificing, although I think one of them actually has a pretty reasonable amount, but the Razr, the Motorola Razr has a tiny battery. And so they're sacrificing battery capacity too. Those are all areas that matter a lot to me. I want to listen to a podcast.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, the battery would have to be considerably smaller to
Speakers,
fit in one
man.
section of the fold.
I really want decent speakers now on a smartphone. I like listening if I'm doing something and I didn't grab my headphones. I want to be able to just set my phone down while I'm doing the dishes or even taking a shower. I want my phone to be loud enough that I could take a shower and hear the podcast.
Yeah, you're right. I'd kind of forgot about that because speakers had been so bad. But once you can do it again, it's not perfect, but it's good enough.
Yeah, and I don't want them to go back on those things, and that's what so far foldable phones are doing.
Been a couple. The screen is actually made of a type of flexible glass, not plastic.
Yeah.
And that could potentially make it more durable.
And it closes completely.
Closes completely, and then you have something that fits in a human-sized pocket, which is something that people complain about.
Now, if these things stick around,
closes completely, and then you have something that
we could
fits
also
in a
just make
human-sized
phones
pocket.
smaller again and not have to fold them.
Well, I do like that size, and you could see where this is going. In the future, that entire front's going to be a screen, right? Right now, it's just down. I'll show you. But there is, if they could get the speakers better, if they could get the battery life up, if they could put a screen on that front where you could check your messages, actually have a touch screen,
which is something
it's a gimmick right now
about a lot of the big screen phones.
And it takes pictures. It takes pictures.
Of course,
I have this note to make sure I point that out right here. I have a note.
Pictures. Now, when
it's closed.
When it's closed, this is kind of fun. There's a tiny little display down
Look at this.
here.
This is so gimmicky.
So if I hit this button twice, I
see
get
that?
a little tiny
Ooh,
camera
weird.
lens.
Right,
See if I can
there you
get
go.
you guys right there.
But you got to turn it over that way.
And then
to
if
the
I
camera.
if I open it up and we go into the camera, that's oh look at that.
See how
That's
it
pretty good.
adjusts the image too, so it slides the image up. There's some things that are cool about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I guess that's the great thing about Samsung in a way is they'll try all this stupid crazy crap and then burn the money figuring it out.
Yeah, I mean, they can do it, right?
Yeah. And somebody comes along and does it.
XMN posted a good video there in the durability test of the screen, and apparently you can scratch it with your fingernail. I'm just kind of watching the video right now, but
yeah,
like it leaves indentations in the soft, flexible.
I mean, you keep your fingernails trimmed, right, Cheese?
I hate to be this.
I mean, I do, but yeah, I mean,
hate-
this guy does too. But
I gotta be the guy that says this because it's true. This is the kind of stuff that Apple waits a year or two to ship, and they let everybody else screw around for a while, and they're not always the first. But if there's an iPhone that's foldable, you're not going to be scratching it with your fingernails, right? I mean, I think we go to bet on that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to do it, but I'm definitely down for a smaller phone, even if I mean I don't want to compromise on cameras and processor speed, but boy, I don't want much else.
Well, it seems like to keep it foldable and a size that's usable, and nowadays everyone wants to add like 16 cameras to the back of a phone.
Yeah, whole back's going to be a camera one day.
Yeah, you don't even have room for the sensors and stuff in there, much less the battery to take a series of photos. But it is interesting, this video that he posted, that I'm amazed they actually sent this guy a phone because he practically just destroys it. But it's
I've seen some of these are all over YouTube right now. They're sending them to a lot of YouTubers.
Yeah, it does.
The little
definitely seem like a play.
mini screen on the back is neat. That can kind of give you your notification count and stuff
on
like
a clock
that.
and
That's cool.
stuff. Yeah. I know there's potential. It's just they're definitely not there yet. Hey, before we get out of here, I'm going to play the whole Linux Unplugged today. So if you showed up, you get the whole show. But I thought, what I ought to do here before we go too far is Joe put out something kind of cool recently, just actually last night. So let's do a little live housekeeping. This here is an extra at extras.show/56. Podcasting Basics with the one and only Joe Resington. Go check that out. Joe talks about the basics of podcasting, including what you can do in a recording space to make it work a little better for you. He breaks down some important differences between two key types of microphones, some post-production techniques, and other bits of wisdom and advice in there.
Turns out he has a little experience doing this.
Yeah, so if you want to just get your recording space better, maybe to participate on Mumble or to record something yourself or even make a video, it's worth checking that out. That's extras.show/56. Our one and the only Mr. Joe Resington put that together. I think that's everything, gentlemen. There you go. There's our official live housekeeping.
We should also mention that today's Linux headlines just dropped.
Oh, yeah?
Get it while it's fresh.
Headlines.show. I could play that.
Yeah, why not?
And then we'll play today's Linux Unplugged because it doesn't have the news from today because we didn't record it today. That's actually kind of perfect. Sometimes there's a lot going on, guys. Sometimes there's a lot going on. This has been one of those weeks. All right, so here's the headlines for today. And then from this, we will roll into Linux Unplugged for the week. So just stick. You don't have to do anything. I'll keep it going in the Mumble Room, too, if you guys want to hang out in there. Thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah.
And we'll be back with a regular show next Tuesday. So please do come back. Thanks, Mumble Room. And thank you, IRC. Thank you, too. irc.geekshed.net. We'll be around for a little bit listening to the show, so you're welcome to hang out with us and continue listening. You're also welcome to stay in the Mumble Room and listen to it in real time. And we start with the headlines with Drew. See you next Tuesday.
I'm Drew with your Linux headlines on February 18th, 2020. Red Hat has been named as one of Fortune's 100 best companies to work for yet again. Having been ranked at the middle of the list in 2019, this year saw Red Hat move up 2 places in Fortune's list to number 48 of its top 100. Blogging about the accolade, Red Hat attributed its success to the company's culture of collaboration and an increasing focus on diversity and inclusion initiatives. Today also saw Red Hat release its annual research report on the state of enterprise open source, finding a continuing decline in the popularity of proprietary software in the corporate world in favor of more open solutions. Mozilla has released a new version of its WebThings gateway. The latest release of Mozilla's distribution for smart home gateways has benefited from a lot of community input, with 24 new language translations having been added since the previous version. The platform's logging facility that provides a graphical time series view of monitored devices has now been rolled out to all users. And Mozilla is retiring its experimental voice-based virtual assistant, but other add-ons that provide voice integration with the gateway through its standard APIs will remain unaffected by this change. Mozilla also released version 73.0.1 of Firefox today to address a number of bugs on both Windows and Linux. One welcome change should remedy crashes on Linux while trying to play encrypted content with the latest version of the browser's Widevine plugin. And finally today, O'Reilly released its annual report on how students used its online learning platform in 2019. The report, which was released last week, can provide a useful indication of current and future trends within the technology industry. But this year's report seemed more to confirm what we already know. On the programming front, Python was far and away the dominant language that students were most interested in part due to its increasing use in the realms of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Other languages that saw a significant uptake include Rust, Kotlin, and Dart, while more established players such as Swift and Ruby declined in popularity. Cloud-native technologies were unsurprisingly in demand, but so was the topic of cloud migration, which suggests that the push by many industry leaders towards a hybrid cloud model is gaining traction. O'Reilly students also paid increasing attention to cybersecurity topics last year. And while there was an upsurge of interest in learning about AWS, interest in Linux also continued to grow among users of the platform. That's your headlines for today. Links at linuxheadlines.show/105. And if you've ever wondered how we put these podcasts together, I recommend you check out Joe Ressington's Extras episode, Podcasting Basics. You can find that episode at extras.show/56. We'll be back tomorrow.
Well, I think we're having ourselves an emergency podcast right now. This is like thrown together. We got to just really slam this one out because I got called into jury duty tomorrow.
You've got to help out the state here, Chris.
Wes, somebody's got to go in and pet the bald eagles.
It does make me feel comfortable that you're the one making the decisions.
Oh yeah, are you sure about that? I got a whole line of things. I'm gonna go in there and give a speech about what I think should be a user voted type of justice. Think that'll get me on the old board? Hello, friends, and welcome into the old Unplugged program where we're celebrating user-created software. My name is Chris.
My name is Wes.
Hello, Wes! Well, here we are on a Monday. No live stream. No Mumble Room.
By ourselves?
Well, we've brought in a little backup. You might say some of our favorite friends, Mr. Cheesebacon and the Drew of Doom. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, guys.
Drew, it's been a while since you've been on the show. Glad to have you on there. Been loving the Choose Linux.
Of course. And Fridays with Drew on Linux Headlines.
Yeah, but you guys know I missed you over here. I just couldn't stay away.
Oh, Drew, I know you're lying. You're just helping us out because we really did get ourselves in a bit of a situation this week. So I apologize if you were planning to make it live and we weren't there. We'll try to do something. We'll try to do something for the live stream, but I don't know what. Since it's kind of a special edition, we thought we should do something we haven't done for a couple of weeks, something we wanted to stay accountable for. And so, Wes, Are you ready, sir?
I am standing by.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to check in on the Arch server. So if you will recall, we replaced a FreeNAS box with a Fedora box, which seemed like a ridiculous decision.
Level 1 insanity.
So then we thought, well, what could we do that would be even more unreasonable? So we replaced that Fedora box with an Arch box. Now this system is responsible for a bunch of media storage that's critical to our operation, as well as several applications, more than several, that run in containers that are vital to our day-to-day operation. So we thought, what better way to take care of a box like this than to update it live right here on the show? Mr. Wes Payne, are you SSH'd in right now?
Oh, yes. We're ready to go.
All right, kick it off, Wes.
Oh, some new kernels, upgraded WireGuard, new systemd version. This is a good one.
Oh, God. All right. Okay.
And gotta love Arch. Downloading like 1.6 gigs of software for a net upgrade size of 2 megs.
That is really great. I always love it when a package manager does that. Well, coming up on the show today, we're going to have a bit of a theme on the episode. After we get done upgrading our rolling server, we're going to read a blog by Richard Brown, the former OpenSUSE chairman, who has a really deep take on the fundamental way we maintain and distribute software in the Linux community, and he's advocating for micro-rolling servers. We'll tell you about that and what we think about that idea. Plus, we've got some software towards the end of the show that is fundamentally designed to help you recover from major system issues like a bad update. It's called TimeShift. It's a beloved piece of software on Linux Mint. We discovered it during our Linux Mint review. Now we've extracted it from Linux Mint because you can put it on any distro, and we're going to focus just on that recovery method. Plus, we got feedback and picks. But right now, we're going to check in on that Archbox. Okay, how we doing, Wes? Downloads going?
Download's going. It's always a little nerve-wracking when you see the step. You're getting rid of all your old DKMS modules, and you just have to hope they come back.
All right, Wes. Well, we'll check back in on that in just a little bit. In the meantime, let's talk about something from the no crap department in the news. Google is publicly shaming Samsung for making unnecessary changes to Linux kernel code. Now, how about this one? This is coming from Google's Project Zero department. They write that Samsung is creating a more vulnerable Android ecosystem by adding its own downstream custom drivers for direct hardware access to Android's Linux kernel.
Yeah, this is really no good. Turns out the Linux kernel has, as they put it, a few sharp edges, and these changes that are being implemented by Samsung and other vendors, they're not being reviewed at all by upstream kernel developers. So that means no one outside of that organization is checking them. The researchers actually found a similar mistake in the Android kernel of the Galaxy A50, and that unreviewed custom driver added security bugs related to memory corruption, which that's no good.
No. Can we just sit here and just acknowledge the obvious? It is absolutely no surprise that when a vendor is adding their own patches that is not being peer-reviewed by the rest of the community, that there is vulnerabilities in there that they did not catch. It seems obvious on its face, and that somebody in Samsung's position clearly, someone in that organization must have at least acknowledged the risk that they were assuming by taking this action. And as an organization, they must have chosen to either ignore that individual or actively ignore the risk.
It does get a little more complicated. I guess some of these are really mitigations or intended mitigations for other security issues. In this case, the bug affected the company's Process Authenticator security subsystem.
Oh.
Yeah, they describe it as a moderate security issue. But from the Google engineers at Project Zero perspective, a lot of these things, they're just not necessary. And so rather than being a mitigation, they just introduce more attack surface.
Not only are they not necessary because there are some facilities in Android that enable some of this same exact functionality, but at the end of the day, some of these are enabling arbitrary code execution. Fundamentally, they're enabling arbitrary code execution. And that's even on Android 10 devices, which is just such a shame. You think you're getting yourself a secure device by getting the latest and greatest version of Android, and they've bolted on these custom fixes so that way they can add value.
Yeah, it is a shame.
I'm not having it.
And Google's been doing a lot of good engineering effort to make Android more secure. Why throw that away?
It seems so obvious. That's why I find it frustrating that it still continues to happen. I understand that there are other options out there. This doesn't condemn all Android devices. But Samsung is such an important player in this space You'd really rather see
And you
it
think,
that
I mean, I know it's a big organization. They have many departments, but you think that at least have some experience knowing you got to work upstream with the kernel community. That's just what you should do.
It's also kind of awkward that their partner Google's calling them out publicly. It's sort of weird, Wes. You know what I mean? All right, Wes, your break is now over. Let's check in on that Archbox.
Upgrade complete. I mean, I don't see any errors.
You ready for the reboot?
Let's do it. There's only one way to find out what these things.
All right.
It reboots so fast. It almost makes me feel nervous. It's gone.
And then it takes so long to get through the BIOS.
Do you think that maybe you should have installed Timeshift first?
We do have a series of snapshots on there. So
yes, and I did see it taking those snapshots, so that's good.
And I'll remind everybody that our philosophy with this Rolling Archbox has truly been keep that base install of Arch absolutely as thin and lightweight and minimal as possible. The thing's really designed to do one thing, mount ZFS storage and run containers. And that's our philosophy with this. So we're hoping that this ultra minimal approach to an Arch deployment is a safer bet than something that's really built up. We'll see. We're going to find out. Because at the end of the day, you're still updating fundamental packages.
Right. There's a lot of change, and we do have to upgrade more often. But the flip side of that is I feel like I understand the system a little bit better.
That's true. I think you and I both stay more current on what that thing's doing. Well, let's shift gears into Richard Brown's post, which was titled, Regular Release Distributions Are Wrong. And we're going to pull a few bits from this because it's pretty thought-provoking, and we'll link you to read the rest. As we record right now, I think the site might be having some troubles, so we'll try to include both a link to the source site and maybe an archive.org version. That's what we had to use. When do you want to start with this one, Wes? You think maybe there's so much to it, including his setup here. What do you say we start with his bit in here about regular and LTS releases and how they mean well? And this is, I think, a point that we could discuss as a group here. He writes, the open source world is made up of thousands, if not millions, of discrete free software and open source projects. And Linux distributions exist to take all of that often chaotic, ever-evolving software and condense it into a single consumable format that is then put into very real-world work by its users. The traditional mindset for distribution builders is that the regular release gives a nice, predictable, plannable schedule in which a team can carefully select appropriate software from various upstream projects. The maintenance often comes in the form of making minimal changes, seeking only to address specific security issues or customer requests, taking great care not to break the systems that are currently in use.
Right, so this is really an example of a classic LTS system, and often, I mean, that can be appreciated. You know, you don't always want the rug pulled out from underneath you and having to adapt to constant changes, especially if it's software that you're not super familiar with, or you didn't need the new features. That wasn't your concern. You just wanted the software to keep working.
Yeah, sometimes it's required by a commercial vendor.
Yeah, and you want a reliable service, especially for something like a server. But it is a little more complicated than that because, I mean, especially here on Unplugged, we want the new stuff. You know, we're always talking about the shiny new features. And so the downside of an LTS often is that you don't have that, or you have to do some really, really terrible workaround or build stuff from source to get it extra. And that doesn't always work.
When we've talked about rolling releases versus traditional, we've often identified that there is a type of user that wants access to current software, either to stay current with their peers or to stay current with somebody they're working with in industry, or because they like to follow software.
Maybe a tool you need for your work, and it's important that you get the new features as quickly as possible.
Yeah. But it's really the nature of what we consider change in a Linux distribution that Richard Brown is calling into question here. He continues, is this change too risky? It's a common question, and quite often, highly desired features take years to deliver in regular releases because the answer is yes. This often means avoiding updating software to entirely new versions, but instead opting to backport the smallest necessary amounts of code and merging them with, much often, older versions already in the regular release.
We usually call these things patches, updates, maintenance, updates, security, updates. Richard suggests, though, that we're really avoiding referring to them what they really are. Freaking software.
Okay, so
a weird, unholy hybrid of things that were never meant to be.
Yeah, hybrid software would be a little more charitable, but what it is, he says, no matter how skilled the engineers that are doing the work, no matter how great the processes or testing are around their backporting, fundamentally, the result is a hybrid mixed together combination of old and new software, which was never originally intended to work together. In the process of trying to avoid risk, backports instead introduce entirely new vectors for bugs to appear. Okay, let's sit with this for a second, guys. He's saying essentially that when you have a regular stable release and you start backporting fixes, you may be solving one security issue, but you could be opening up a whole series of bugs. And I'm no software developer, but it does make sense that if you're taking two bits of code that are very close together but not intended to work together, it could create other possible issues.
It certainly depends on the specifics, right? But you can imagine simple changes that are just, change the default config option or something. But depending on how far the software has progressed, you're basically having a totally separate fork. And to make certain security fixes, it might mean significant re-architecture or touching a large swath of the code base because it's changed and you can't just apply the fix that gets applied to the head of the branch, right?
Right. And I think a lot of times we'll charitably call these a regression. Oh, it was a regression. And we continue to do it as a model of delivering software. It's not just Linux distributions. For example, you have Firefox 73 that came out last week, and version 68 ESR, or whatever it was, also came out. Well, clearly they're taking some bug fixes and security issues, and they're backporting them from the current version of Firefox to that old branch. And it's so common that we don't even talk about this process anymore because it's just how you do it.
It's just normal.
Yeah. But he's kind of calling that entire thing into question. And I think if you narrow the scope, which he is here, to just servers and how server software and open source software is distributed, his argument starts to make sense when you consider, and he writes, the more people involved in working on something, the more eyeballs looking at the code, the better. That's a fundamental truth. And yet, when you think about it, it also means you have handfuls of people contributing software at different paces, at different schedules, updating all different aspects of a system, at all different interests, commitments, timelines, motivations, etc. I mean, it's a massive spectrum. And perhaps in this reality, when software is developed in this way, we're kind of fooling ourselves a little bit here. And that if we could build a system where we could continue to just stay current with the latest stuff, like the way Linus considers security issues bug fixes, just everything's a bug fix. Everything's a fix.
And we have seen this attitude more prevalent on all kinds of systems, right? I mean, some would say a lot of the DevOps philosophy. And if you think about the flip side, have you ever gone, you waited a couple LTSs? Maybe, I was personally involved with 1204 to 1604. That was part of the systemd change. It was a nightmare. There were just so many changes to the system. And you've got to imagine, in some sense, if developers had been given a little more time to get used to those, adapt during the process, in the end, it might be smoother.
My wife's clinic's workstation is on 1604, and a lot of the repos don't work anymore. So the updates are failing, and I guess that version doesn't auto-clean the boot partition. I thought it did, but her boot partition filled up again, so then it stopped updating. It's really getting decrepit, and the software on that thing it's still running Unity 7, right? It's really feeling old. But it works for her, but it's clear that the rest of the software world has moved on. Drew, since you're our special guest, I wanted to kind of get your take on this from your sysadmin days. Usually the rolling argument falls down when you start talking about server deployments, but Richard goes on to make the argument here that, you solve that by creating microserver OSs that just do one thing, much like our Archbox.
He's got a point, but I do think the argument does fall down quite a bit here in 2020. 3 years ago, I think this would have been a much stronger argument. But nowadays, with the prevalence of containers and snaps and Flatpaks and app images, I am less inclined to go the way he's going. I was a rolling user for a long, long time. But with the advent of, you could almost say containerized applications and containers themselves, I don't see this as something that's strictly necessary anymore, especially in server software. How many people are deploying things on bare metal anymore? Just about everybody is using Kubernetes and Docker, and increasingly even enterprise level stuff is moving that direction. So to me, the ability to have a very stable base that's been quality assured by the team who put it together, and then stack software on top of that is rolling, that's based in a container, why do I need the base system to be rolling at this point?
You flipped the argument around is what you've done here.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not something that I buy anymore. I would rather have in production a system that I know is dependable and has a solid team doing the security patches like Ubuntu or like Red Hat, and is putting together a product that I know I can rely on and gets really good, tested, quality assured updates. And I don't feel like I get that level of quality assurance, testing, whatever you want to call it, in a rolling distro. It just doesn't feel rock solid and bulletproof like some of these others do.
I think to buy his argument, you have to accept that the distributions are not providing a ton of value, that they're mostly providing organizational and smoothing of rough edges. And then when they backport, they're kind of slamming the software together. That's sort of what he's implying. And he may be in a better position than I, having been the OpenSUSE chairman and being involved with OpenSUSE forever. He may know better than me, but I feel like it's a little uncharitable to distributions. I feel like that's sort of underselling what they do. But I think I might agree with his fundamental argument. I might see it the opposite way Drew does. What about you, Wes?
Yeah, it is complicated. A little more data, I think, would be useful because there's a lot of philosophy in this, and rightfully so, and well-made questions and arguments. But do we see that many problems of regressions in patches, security patches? Is this burden of maintaining these really that big of an issue? Right? It seems like, at least from Drew and many other admins that I've talked to, LTS is appreciated, and they have security compliance in play. If that was a major problem, then they would probably consider moving to a rolling distribution, right?
Okay, so there's a bit of philosophy in here, like you just said. And I think we should touch on that for a second. And Cheese, put on your philosophy hat for this question. Imagine if all of the open source developer time that is used to backport to old releases was spent working on new stuff. Like we took X amount of time and dedicated it to new stuff. That is part of his argument. He writes, a small handful of committed volunteers and those that are employees of companies selling commercial regular releases. These are limited resources that are often siloed with only time and resources to work on very specific distributions with their specific backports and patches that are often hard to even be reused by other communities. I think he's got a fair point. For better or for worse, that is true. What if all of a sudden we had all that time back and it was all just new stuff? I feel like we probably would be further along in some areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we would be further along in some areas if we were, progressive about it and we continued to take that time from doing all these backports and ensuring that these LTSs were secure and moving forward with software, would probably fast track us to, evolve the software in itself and create new and interesting software. But in that same vein, I think that you could say that also introduces bugs, right? And potential security vulnerabilities. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? So, I kind of align with Drew and what he says. And with an LTS, I mean, it is long-term support and you expect that. But if you had this additional time and you could use that time to further the software along and create new and interesting software, I mean, you have that opportunity as well. So it's really, this whole article is really more of a philosophical article in and of itself, I believe, and is really an opinionated piece. I do agree with a lot of what he says, but there's part of me that thinks that there are LTSs for a reason, and between these LTS releases, that gives your sysadmin and your developers time to come up to speed with the latest technology. So when do you have a lull so that your devs can get up to speed with this new technology if you're creating the technology so fast?
Okay, so that's a great point. They got to have an opportunity to learn, which, okay, all right. But in some ways, Wes, couldn't you argue that perhaps rolling, at least at some level, could be easier to understand?
Right. It's all about cadence, right? I mean, a rolling is just a lot of little tiny releases. And so you can learn these changes. There's less to learn when you have constant changes instead of one big heap of changes.
Right. You're maybe updating a dozen packages versus 1,000 packages, and there's maybe 3 changes for each package versus 200 changes.
Right. And I think of it from maybe a development angle as well. And that's just, minimizes your pain as long as you're doing it sometime. And you might not update every day. It might be that you update every week or every 2 weeks so that you're aware of those changes. But having a smaller change set to go diff and look back through when you're trying to debug something or figure out why something won't compile anymore, that's really nice.
So where does this leave us, really? I think there's one way to find out. We could check on how our server's doing, and that could be the ultimate answer.
Oh, I was hoping you weren't going to say that.
Has it back up yet?
All right, well, it rebooted, no problem. It didn't load the ZFS module.
You're kidding me?
I know. What? So, no containers were running. No ZFS file systems mounted. I'm currently rebuilding the DKMS modules. We'll see if that just.
Oh, that is sometimes a thing, but usually not. We have not had that problem on Arch yet. Well, I think that proves it right there. I think Cheese and Drew are right. You guys got that one because, we'll see. It's probably not a big deal. I guess that's a fair part of the conversation. Is every now and then these things happen. I suppose if this was a real, honest to legit, revenue-generating piece of equipment, we'd probably have the storage on like an iSCSI device. And it wouldn't be directly attached to this one host where we're using a ZFS kernel module to mount it, right? It'd be on another host that's running the disk that has it mounted, or we'd be iSCSIing it and mounting it that way over iSCSI.
And there's also other things. I'm sure we could have detected this problem before we rebooted or adjusted some parameters to ensure that.
However, good on us for going Btrfs on the root so that way at least the host system gets up and you can troubleshoot, right?
That's really been working very well.
You were able to SSH in.
Yeah, no problem. Came up, rebooted normally.
This was part of our belt and suspenders approach to Arch. It really was, is get snapshots, which we're not going to bother with in this case because it's probably a pretty easy fix, but also give yourself a way to get in when the system doesn't work right.
And the snapshots here do mitigate a lot. I mean, we're not going to use them. I'd rather just sort of roll forward in this case. But right, if we wouldn't do this unless we hadn't allocated at least some kind of maintenance window. And with snapshots, it means, okay, it didn't work. Try it again later, roll it back, and then you don't have to miss that window.
We've done some off-air, I should say, upgrades to it too. So we haven't only been upgrading it on the show. And so it's been probably a dozen times, maybe half a dozen. I mean, I know I've probably done it half a dozen times, and you've probably done another handful of times, and it hasn't had an issue. But I'm pretty glad that when we did, we caught it on the show because this is how it goes. This is the real world, and these are the things you need to know. And when you hear why you shouldn't run Arch on a server, it's like, well, if you don't want to deal with this, if you don't know how to reinstall a DKMS module, which is just a pacman command, but if that goes over your head, then it's not the right OS for you.
I didn't even read the Arch blog before doing this, which I probably should have.
Well, there was that whole I had game show music countdown playing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that this is the perfect type of system to test this idea on, though, right? Because it's not like Equifax's database server or something, right? It's right. This personal server that we're using. It
disrupts some podcasts.
Right. It might disrupt a little bit of a file storage thing, but you always have your ZFS pool that you can reattach to. So it's not like theoretically anything is really lost. Right? Like you've got some containers you might have to rebuild and you've got, let's say if you change the host from Arch to something else, you might have to rebuild those containers and reattach to your ZFS pool. But other than that, you still have a security net there that you don't have to worry about the system actually breaking and falling into pieces. So
there is one aspect of this conversation that I think he nails before we completely move on. And that is treating the server a little bit different than we traditionally have with old school Linux. In old school Linux, you got these DVDs or CD-ROMs or whatever, and there was like 6 disks, and you would do this whole install. It would be, you'd install all kinds of packages just in case you ever needed to install another kind of package. And it was assumed that you'd have all these different things in a distribution that was much larger than it actually needed to be if that was only doing one job and one job only.
You made a big standalone multi-purpose machine.
Yes. And even if you installed just a mail server on it, still had all this other stuff. That has shifted. And the idea of one server, one function in the world of VMs and containers is very, very affordable and very attainable. And I do think that is the way to just really solid server systems in the future is one micro install instance that only has the bare minimum of what it needs to run a container or a VM. And then in that VM, it's a absolute bare minimum install, only needs what it has to have. And you're only maintaining that small set of packages. And that's why there's so much room for all these different flavors of Linux. From OpenSUSE MicroOS to Alpine to the RHEL core stuff now.
And there's even unikernels where the programming language, they don't even have a regular kernel. It's all just that.
And in the meantime, the rest of the world will just keep on using Ubuntu.
Well, and he's also spot on about atomic style updating. Mm-hmm. He mentions MicroOS, which is the OpenSUSE version, but the whole idea of transactional updates is fantastic. It's something that I've really taken a liking to, not just in servers, but also on the desktop with things like Silverblue, which I think could be the future of how we do a lot of things, having an immutable base, which is read-only, and then you can layer stuff on top, including containers. That's really what it's built for. And it really feels like the next generation of server computing, especially. Maybe desktop, I don't know, I'm back and forth on that, but for servers, yeah, it's the ability to roll back without having to deal with things like snapshots because they're baked in. It's fantastic.
I agree. That's why we're going to talk about Timeshift today. So that way folks that are listening can implement this on their desktop or laptop or even your server in a way that's really straightforward, just using rsync. Or if you have Btrfs, it uses native Btrfs snapshots. Because these snapshots are really great functionality. We decided to install it on our recording system here that has an awesome jack setup. It's a lot, but amazingly, we are able to expose all 32 inputs and outputs from our mixer to jack. And so we can wire the mixer in jack and then send it to Reaper for recording and pipe it out to our remote guests in the mumble room with virtual syncs and whatever you call it.
It's just flexible and lovely.
It's awesome. However, you could see how an audio package could come along and break the whole thing, and we would not be able to record. We're really dependent on it now.
Yeah, there's PPAs involved and a lot of specific configuration. It's delicate.
So we thought, Jesus, this is a perfect candidate. Perfect. So Wes, he laid his hands on the machine and he blessed it with Timeshift, and we're going to tell you how that went in just a moment. But first, just some quick housekeeping. Just a few items of note. If you haven't had a chance, go check out Linux Headlines, linuxheadlines.show. Every weekday, in 3 minutes or less, what's going on in the world of Linux. I do Mondays. Drew does Tuesdays. I do Wednesdays. Wes does Thursdays, and then Drew's back to wrap us up on Fridays. So we just sort of shifted around so that way not one of us completely burns out. But what's really cool, behind the scenes, we have a dedicated staffer to doing research, to collecting stories, to verifying them. But we also bounce it around the team before it publishes, and then we do a peer review before we actually release the MP3 file. So in that 3 minutes, you are getting super tight, accurate, condensed information with the hype removed, with all of our different perspectives on it, regardless of who's hosting it. Really proud of that work. linuxheadlines.show, and of course, one went out today, and it's a great way to just, when you're going down the road, why not just start out with a 3-minute show and then get into whatever you're going to listen to? That's really great. Also, jupiterbroadcasting.com/telegram. Just going great.
Yeah, come join the party.
I think I owe the whole Telegram group a beer now. I'm not sure how we're all going to get in one place.
I think I need to give them tacos. It's
PBRs.
It's going to be a good night, though.
Not going beyond PBRs. Don't work tacos in there. Everybody wants tacos now. We're not doing tacos again. At least that's on you. Unless you want to bring the tacos, you're the taco guy. I'll be the PBR guy. You'll be the dude. This is sounding great, actually.
Now we just need a place.
Also, if you haven't checked out my side thing, Chris Last Cast, me and Brent, we're launching an empire over there. No, actually, I just decided when we were talking about the burnout stuff to do a little creative outlet, and I've kind of been keeping it going. Brent talked me into it. We sat down, and I created myself a little note challenge. So I got my notes right here. I'm sticking to it so far.
You have a lovely notebook there.
Yeah. So Brent and I checked that out, chrislast.com. That's just went up this morning as we record because we're doing this one a little early. Hopefully, things will be back to our regularly scheduled program next week, Tuesday at noon Pacific. But since I'm at jury duty, we don't really know. We don't really know until I just go. So I go tomorrow, If we're not live, we'll try to figure out another time. Maybe we'll do like a late night LUP party.
Oh, that could be fun.
You do that, we'll do some pizza, we'll watch a movie, we'll watch Revolution OS. We could really do this.
Yeah, I'm down.
We could grab some clips, watch Revolution OS, have some pizza, and then go record a LUP. I mean, if you got to do jury duty, you might as well chill out.
Might as well make it fun.
We'll figure out something. It might be kind of a weird one, but we'll figure it. We won't leave you hanging, at least hopefully. Anyways, that is our housekeeping for today. Let's talk about TimeShift.
Before we do, I've got an Arch update. Yeah, it turns out the latest kernel that we just downloaded, not yet supported by ZFS on Linux. There's another GPL-only symbol change that has not yet been fixed.
So, revert? Go back?
Back in time.
Very good, very good. Well, that shouldn't be too hard of a fix. You think you'll have it done before the end of the show?
Oh, yeah.
You think so?
Gotta do it right now.
Okay, we'll see. I mean, that thing does take a while to reboot. So TimeShift is a Linux application that provides functionality similar to Windows Restore or maybe Time Machine on Mac OS. It protects your system by taking incremental snapshots of the file system at regular intervals. Now, these snapshots can be restored later to undo the changes. And it will use rsync with hard links on a system that doesn't have Btrfs. And the nice thing about those hard links is common files that are shared between the snapshots will just be hard linked, and then you don't have duplicates and it saves space. Each snapshot is a full system backup that you can actually go browse with a file manager. But here's what's also really cool. In Btrfs mode, snapshots are taken using built-in Btrfs file system features, which is really cool. Now, I think the one thing that might surprise people is if I recall when we were setting this up, Wes, by default it doesn't back up user data.
Yeah, and that's actually intentional. It's designed to just try to keep the system safe. And so if you break something in your system, you don't also want to lose all the latest Excel files you were working on, right? You want those to stay. And so the idea is with TimeShift, you just roll that right back.
All those Excel files. That's your example?
I don't know.
I like your picture of the typical Mint user right now in your head. That's what that was.
Yeah. Hey, spreadsheets.
All right. Okay. Well, that actually makes a lot of sense because a lot of times you'll have maybe your most personal or important stuff in some public cloud storage with the permission set to public, or you'll have them in Dropbox with a single encryption, or you'll throw them on SyncThing that isn't actually syncing because it's always breaking on you, and they won't actually be only in your home directory. Hey, come on, that's how it goes, right? That's how it works. But you could add it. It's just a matter of going in the configuration and adding it to backup.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you could do it. We did not, though. We just had it focused on the system, and we wanted to...
I did add a few.
Oh, yeah? What?
I did add some of the files in that we don't ever really change, but just some like handy binaries that aren't stored in the usual system paths.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, of course, we actually excluded the recordings themselves.
Absolutely.
We don't need to back those up into a snapshot. We just really want to restore the configuration state so we can record again. That's really the main thing. And because we have committed to ourselves to keeping these systems fairly up to date, we don't do it like every day, but, about once a month we upgrade all these boxes. And so we do want to have an escape hatch just in case something goes wrong. And snapshots can be restored by just either using the GUI, which is nice. It comes with a GTK GUI. Or you could boot into another live environment and you can restore using a live environment too, as long as you can access it.
If you really mess things up.
So I'm going to pull it up. Let's take a look at it right here.
Yeah, it was very easy to get started with.
I'm going to, and of course, what really put us onto this was the people that were writing in when they were explaining why they use Mint talked about how TimeShift had saved their bacon a couple of times. And it's nice because when you go in here, you can look at individual snapshots. It has a big green badge saying that it's active. It gives you a big number on how much available storage you have and how many snapshots have occurred. All just clearly listed right here.
And you didn't have to set anything up. That's just how it shows up. And it will automatically set up cron jobs for you to make sure it takes those snapshots on time.
Yeah. So that was the thing is when people wrote in, they were like, you really got to go use this because it really makes this simple. And now I can see it. I can really appreciate it because it's so simple. You can right click right there and you have mark for deletion. You can do file management. You can browse the files, or it's one click to just restore that entire snapshot. And they have a field in here. So if you want to go back in later and say, okay, I'm taking a snapshot, you can add comments. So you could say, this is our pre-upgrade snapshot, and I could leave a little note here. So if you showed up to record TechSnap and something wasn't working, you could go in there and say, oh, Chris did an upgrade.
Yeah, that's really nice for multi-user systems.
Mm-hmm. So I had something happen the other day and I thought, Jack, it broke. It finally broke on us. And I got a hold of you and we troubleshot it for a little bit and ended up just having to restart Pulse or something. But it was at that moment I was thinking to myself, I really need to get going on this recording. So I wonder if we had a snapshot system. And so when Time Shift kind of came on our radar, I thought this is going to be a perfect solution. So we loaded it here, and I don't see any reason why we're going to stop using it. I think we'll just keep using it on our production Kubuntu system. Oh no, now it's XFCE. It's a Kubuntu install with XFCE.
I'm curious though. You can schedule this in a cron job so that you can dump, maybe have 3 backups, dump the oldest, create a new one sort of scenario?
Yeah, it has some retention configuration set up already. So you sort of choose how often you want and how many you want to keep. And it'll do all the updating and rolling for you.
Yeah, and it gives you a nice GUI for going and setting the location, for adjusting the cron schedule so you don't have to be a cron expert.
Yeah, I'm looking at the GUI now. The GUI looks actually fantastic. It really does look like a quality piece of software.
There is one issue you may run into, which we did as I was trying to add a couple extra things in the home directory. There is a nice little filters part, so you can sort of add excludes or include files specifically on sort of regex style patterns. That doesn't really work in the GUI. It turns out it'll let you add stuff, but that never doesn't make it to the config file. There is an issue open. It seems to just be a recent regression in the latest release. And thankfully, the config file is just a simple JSON file. So there's already some filters in there. You can see how it is. Just got to copy and modify a couple lines.
I'm close to calling this a must load for any system where you are really serious about needing to get back up and running, or a family member, if you deploy a Linux box for a friend or family member.
The nice thing about it was that, especially because of the rsync support, we didn't have to do, when we set up the server with Snapper and stuff, we spent a while considering how are we going to do this file system layout? What's the right thing? With TimeShift, it just installed the PPA, got it going. And that was it. It was probably 20 minutes of just playing with it. And now we haven't thought about it. We have all these snapshots.
Yeah. And I love rsync. That's good. If you use the ButterFS support, there is a couple of requirements on how you have things laid out, but they're totally reasonable, but just worth checking before you use the ButterFS support. Well, Brent just joined us. Brent, have you had a chance to look at TimeShift? You got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've seen TimeShift. The first time I saw it was in Linux Mint, I don't know, a few years ago. And that got me kind of excited about it because of the rsync backend. And I'm a huge, huge fan of rsync because of its, robustness, but also because I know a tool like this, I love seeing rsync in the backend because I know that if for any reason TimeShift stops working the way I want it to, I understand what's happening on the bottom end, so I can use tools I'm familiar with to diagnose something that's going wrong with the backups if that ever happens. So that is some pretty good peace of mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's not some magical special backup format. It's just directories or ButterFS snapshots.
Now, it looks like, reading around on their website, that you'll get unpredictable results if you're pointing it at containers and stuff like that. So beware. This is more for a workstation snapshot. That's the ideal use case, I think.
Yeah, this looks really cool. I haven't had any experience with this project yet, but one thing I'm wondering is if they'll integrate ZFS snapshots at some point. I think that would be super, super cool.
I saw someone on their GitHub offering to start working on ZFS support and then contribute it back. So that could be in the works. I agree. Especially with 2004 shipping ZFS, I would love to see that. Now, Mr. Payne, we do have some feedback to get to, including one from Troy about new users and Linux Mint. He writes, Chris, I've been listening to your shows since the Linux Action Show days when Brian was around, and I love the shows, love the work, keep it up. I was just listening to episode 339 of the Mint Mindset, and I just wanted to give some feedback. I know with your background that the show is probably focused more towards the geek community than the average operating system consumer. Most people in your sphere of influence are programmers or inspired by the bells and whistles that people seem to love. Now, come on now. That's Troy. Okay, he's probably right. He's probably right, actually. Okay, go on. Continuing on. I got a little worked up there. I felt like he was accusing me, but he's probably right. I mean, we do like the shiny. He goes on, well, I work for a computer service shop in our area. We make most of our money supporting the various bugs that occur in Windows computers and doing virus cleanups and so forth. However, we've gotten more and more requests from customers, both businesses and home users, about purchasing computers or upgrading their computers to Linux. And after trying a large variety of distributions myself and trying with different customers, I have to say that the feedback they give us about Linux Mint is how similar it is to Windows 7, and they love it. They love it. Linux Mint is not only easy to use, but it looks sexy as hell. It also allows for geek and power users to get things done as well. I met several people, including myself, who run Linux Mint web servers. So there you go.
All right, well, last bit aside, which is frankly scares me a little. I think the point of like, this is working for users. They like it. It's an easy transition. That's important.
I agree. I think that's what matters the most right there. There's nothing really else to say about it. He says, he wraps up, I guess I'm saying don't always look at everything from such a high level since most computer users are just average consumers. They want to use it and get their daily tasks done. I think we agree with that, actually. And I think that's a lot of times why we've even wondered if Linux is the right answer. And I think Elementary OS and Mint are telling us yes. I would also wonder, Troy, if you had chance, be curious to know what the feedback would be for something like Ubuntu Mate 2004 when it comes out. Maybe try slapping that on a few machines, because I recently gave the daily ISO a go for Mate 1.24, and it is looking real good. And it's not Cinnamon. I'll grant. Cinnamon kind of does have that Windows 7 vibe going, but it still has that traditional paradigm. And 2004 will be supported for a long time, and it seemed really good. Daniel writes in with a question we've gotten a couple of times. It's about these ThinkPad T480s. He says, in episode 323, you mentioned a shim is being developed for the T480 fingerprint reader. This was back in October, and it seems that the official drivers were released for almost every ThinkPad except the T480 and a few other models. As far as I know, there's no official development going on for the fingerprint reader, but maybe you could get an update on this, because if there is, I'd like to know, or if it's been abandoned. Thanks in advance, Daniel.
Unfortunately, I don't have any updates on official support. There was a project over on GitHub to reverse engineer the protocol and add support that way. They made some progress, I guess, on the specific model that's on this ThinkPad. It will initialize and the LEDs work, but scan doesn't work. And unfortunately, at least on the master branch, the last commit was like a year ago.
Oof. Oh, see, I kind of heard a rumor it was in development, but I bet it was that.
Here's hoping, though.
All right, well, just a couple of more. One more from Jason, and this one is so cool. I had no idea, so I'm so glad he wrote it. And he says, not sure if y'all heard of this, but there is a community plugin for Cockpit called Cockpit ZFS Manager. He says it's a great plugin to help those that are used to a GUI style of managing ZFS from FreeNAS, but are moving over to ZFS on Linux. It's still in the alpha beta stage per the developer and requires Cockpit 201 or greater and Samba, because it can also do some Samba share stuff.
I think we're going to have to give it a try.
This does sound pretty cool. He says maybe the JB community could show the developers some love. I agree. I think that would be really cool. And he says, love all the shows. Hopefully one day I'll find time to join in live. Well, hopefully it wasn't going to be this Tuesday, because we're not here. I'm in the courthouse. That is really neat. I didn't actually need it, but now I want it.
Right? I mean, just thinking back on our fake NAS there, Cockpit was one of our favorite parts about using Fedora on that system, and having ZFS support would have been perfect.
And you know what was great about that is we totally had no intention of even really trying out Cockpit much, but we kept getting little notes from the audience saying, hey, you should try out Cockpit. Hey, let's check it out. And they were so right. Will writes in with our last one, and it's a shorty. It's a prediction for the show. He says, follow-up prediction for Wes's Bcache prediction. If Bcache FS does make it upstream in 2020, Jupiter Broadcasting will be using it in production before the end of the year. I think that's pretty solid.
Seems right to me.
I mean, I'm absolutely putting it on my laptop for sure. And I use that for production. So, I mean, come on. How great would that be?
I've just said it too many times. I have to install it once it's there.
Bcache for the root file system, ZFS for the data, Btrfs for my home. I'm a happy guy. That's like a perfect setup for me. I'm all about that.
It's all about seeing how many different file systems you can use at once.
I mean, that's the great thing about Linux, right? It's all about choice, Wes. Okay, we have a really cool app pick for you that I'm going to let Wes pick or tell you about, because he found this pick and he wants to geek out hard on it. It is pretty neat.
Yeah, okay. You've probably heard of JQ, the handy little command line tool for manipulating JSON, making JSON queries, that sort of thing, right? It works really well, but a lot of the time, at least on the Linux command line, you don't always have JSON. I mean, we do have the Unix philosophy, so you have this text output, but I'm sure we've all been in the experience of, okay, I just want to grab the IP address field, and now I have to like grep and awk and cut, and it just gets to be kind of a mess. It's almost a little embarrassing too when you think about things like PowerShell, where they do have a lot more structured output.
I was going to mention that, yeah.
So, I mean, we're not there yet. Some tools, I learned this today, IP route 2, the new IP command, that has a -J flag, and it'll output JSON for you right there. So, boom. Some of this is handled, some like systemd, some newer tooling does have integrated JSON support. But for everything else that doesn't, there's JC. It has a whole bunch of built-in support. So if you have a handy classic Unix tool, you just pass that as a command line option. It'll ingest the output. It already knows how to parse it, and then give you JSON right out.
Whoa. Okay, that is legitimately geeky cool.
I mean, it's definitely a hack, but I think it's better than everyone rolling their own little parsers all the time. We can at least here have a sort of semi-standardized community to make sure they work well.
Check out the link in the show notes if you want to visualize what Wes is talking about, because they have some example outputs on there. This is one of those where people hear about this and be like, okay. And then one day they'll need it and they'll be like, what episode was it you guys talked about that had that JSON thing that now I need for some weird arbitrary reason that I never expected I would need? It's episode 341. So you can get those links at linuxunplugged.com/341. If you'd like to send us a pic or send us some feedback like we just read, linuxunplugged.com/contact.
Please do.
I really like that one. That was pretty good. And we'll have links to Timeshift and Richard's article and all the other things we talked about in those show notes too. And of course, those are found in your podcast catcher of choice. And if you haven't enjoyed our chapter markers yet, why not take a look?
Yeah, give it a try.
It's pretty nice. And it's also very easy to jump back to a topic if you ever need to. So those chapter markers are great. And we thank our great editors like Joe and Drew for making those possible. Thank you, Drew.
You're very welcome.
And of course, Joe, but he's not here. Don't thank Joe. Come on. Gotta give him a hard time. All right, well, hopefully everything will be back to our regularly scheduled Linux Unplugged program on our regular Tuesday day at noon Pacific. You can get that converted over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. I'm at Chris LAS. He's at Wes Payne. The show is at Linux Unplugged. See you next Tuesday! Okay, I think I could use some advice. Kind of on topic, too, with what we've been talking about.
Lay it on us.
So I've got access for a limited time to Hidea's Clinic machine. Like I said, that's running, I think it's 1604. It's got to be. What do I do with this thing? Do I attempt to, say, replace like all of the repos that are, it's like the Telegram, PPA, the Chrome repo. There's several that aren't working. Do I spend the time to get all that working again, if it's even possible on 1604, and then just update it, and she just stays on 1604 for a little bit longer? Or do I try to bring her up to 1804? Or do I just wait and just skip this window of opportunity and just take her straight to 2004 in maybe a month or two? Well, but the thing is, I don't.
Can you wait that long?
I don't know if I'll get access to it again.
How risky is it?
But what's it do? What's the use case for it?
So what's it do and how risky is it are both really good questions. So what's it do right now is essentially just information input to web applications or some light printing and scanning. It doesn't do a lot, so it's been perfectly fine on 1604 with Unity 7 and all of that for ages. I think 1604 was a new release when I put it on there, which is crazy.
Right?
Wow. So I haven't really been super motivated to throw it on the latest and greatest because they like Unity and it works. But things like Chrome and Telegram are yelling at her that they're going to stop working because they haven't been upgraded in so long. And those are kind of essential to the workflow.
I know you guys have been playing with 2004. How crazy would it be to put her on like a development release, considering we're kind of close? Is that out there and too wild?
I don't know if I have like a really authoritative opinion on it yet, but my initial impressions have been that 2004 is close to daily drivable, if not there already. It seems like it's been pretty solid. But I've been mostly using the Mate version, so I don't know about the GNOME shell side of it, but I've heard from others that it's solid.
My inclination would be to go ahead and document what all they have installed on there and actually use, and then take them to like 1804 Mate. And when 2004 Mate comes around, it should be, if you find another upgrade window, it should be pretty easy to roll them up to 2004.
But if I don't, no big deal. They're on 1804 and it's going to be supported for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd go ahead and enable Live Patch too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's pretty solid, I think.
And maybe make a backup before you get started.
Put Time Shift on there. Seriously, I should seriously put Time Shift on there. I'm going to write a note. That's actually a really good use of it for her. That's a perfect use case example. This is a front office computer that they want to book appointments on and scan information into, and I got to keep it up to date because it needs to be secure.
Yeah,
but we can't have it break either. And that GUI, assuming they can at least get to the desktop, that GUI is totally usable by them.
Yeah, it's very intuitive. I think that would be a much easier transition from Unity than, say, GNOME or even XFCE or Cinnamon. It's going to feel a little different, but not so much that they can't find what they need.
Yeah, I could use that Mutiny layout too.
Yeah, could do.
That pre-configured
layout.
Oh,
that might be really nice.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the show. Have a great rest of your week. See you next Tuesday.
Okay, pictures are going. Tony, you're not going to see much out the right side of my